Hello! Welcome to another episode of Video Feedback Techniques. Today I'm going to be showing you this pretty cool mode that I'm in right now, which you can get using just a camera, a mixer with a Luma key, and some kind of screen. And what I'm going to do is show you a couple of variations on this, show you the details on how to get into this mode, and try I've got 3 screens here available that we're going to try with, and another camera that we're going to swap out with too. So as you can see, I've got really big CRT, got a smaller broadcast Trinitron CRT, and I've got this upscaling LCD TV over here too. So some notes on the equipment that we're using right now. The camera I have at the moment is a JVC tube camera. It is a single tube camera. Tube cameras are really nice for sort of soft, liquidy kind of feedback stuff. You can find them for reasonable prices. The only thing to keep in mind about purchasing used tube cameras is, one of the main things to keep in mind is that they usually require like a VTR, like this, some sort of like external power supply and video converter thing, which usually has some sort of like weird proprietary cable things that may or may not be like difficult to come across. So if you get a tube camera online, it would be recommended to double check that you have a VTR and all the cables necessary first, because otherwise you can end up getting in a loop where you keep searching for things that are unsearchable or difficult to find, or only to find with another camera or something. The mixer I'm using today is this Panasonic MX70, which is a very digital SD video mixer. I think it's one of the last Panasonic SD mixers that you can get that works with like the composite signals mainly. It works with, so it's got inputs for composite, component, and S-video. Something that people don't really like about that is it's got this the digital analog hybrid thing where there's like soft, like a LCD menu, and the soft what do you call it? Soft potentiometers that change depending on what menu you're in. There's a lot of menu diving, but one of the things that I like about it that we're going to be using heavily is that it has this color effects thing. Let's see if I can focus on that. It has color effects where what you see is it's got Y setup, Y gain, PB, PR, and C gain. What this is it's literally taking apart the components of the composite video signal, which is Y means luminance, and PB and PR are like the phase for blue and the phase for red, and C gain means color gain, so you can do some pretty detailed fine-tuning on chrominance and color on this to get some really out-of-bounds radical and sometimes hideous outcomes. But yeah, this is controlling the light is actually pretty handy in this particular mode, and since I'm using a camera which doesn't really have a lot of fine-tuned light control, I would like to have some way to dial up and down the light. So for example, right now, I'll just take the Y gain down a bit and we can see how radically things change. Dialing the Y gain down, and I haven't explained this setup yet as to why dialing down Y is going to do anything, but you can see that just having this knob that I'm moving around is changing things pretty strongly. Cool. So let me explain this setup right now. So what I'm doing is taking the camera into channel or source 1 here, and then I'm assigning source 1 to 2 different channels. So here's channel 1, and on channel 1 what I have done is I've gone into the video effects thing and just inverting black and white, so inverting the Y channel. You can do this inverting the color as well. On this one, it tends to kind of kill color when you invert it if you don't do the right things. But we'll look at it both ways as we go through here, but for now I'm just going to be inverting black and white. And that's the only effect I'm doing. So you can do this, there's a lot of mixers you can get which have black and white invert and Luma key around. And then over on the color effects thing, on this black and white channel, I'm really grinding up the Y gain. So if you want to do this on a camera, you could, if you have an iris control on your camera, and if you could, or you can do things like set your white balance to be very, very strong. These are other ways to sort of like do the same thing as what Y gain is doing here. Grinding up the color gain a bit and adjusting the colors somewhat. If I leave them, so here's like a pass through on the colors, and you can see that it's mostly just kind of going to green. But I'm going to bump up color gain again, dialing in some more red, dialing in some more blue, because I don't like it when things just hang out in green all the time. I like to have a bit more color than just like the clamp out feedback green. Okay, and then this is what I'm doing with channel 2. On channel 2, I'm just doing some similar things in terms of the light and color. Grinding, I'm turning up the color gain a lot, and adjusting PB and PR just a bit. So let's just play with this. Let me turn off all effects here for a moment. So this is just the tube camera feedback on the screen. Let's just get a feel for how this looks. You can see it's got some really smooth edges. There is digital processing happening within this mixer, so it's a little slower, a little slower than it would be on mixers with less digital things happening. We are getting some really nice reaction diffusion lines happening. It's partially because I've dialed up the sharpness on this monitor a bit, and also because this has a really nice lens on it, which allows you to fine-tune the focal range. So that's what I'm doing right now, and I'm sort of dialing in these worms a little bit more. There's not so many worms, and then here's a lot more worms. Awesome. Yeah, so, and then I'm going to turn the effects back on. You can see I put a little bit of after trails on this one. This is it with no decay, and this is it with a little bit more decay. So, I also kind of like to have this sort of control because it allows you to dial in when you have delay. The more delay you have, the more chance you have of these sort of like really complex like reaction diffusion worms to pop out. So I'm going to take advantage of the fact that this mixer has a delay. It's called decay on this, but it's just the same thing as delay or after image or trails. And let me turn the color effects back on. And just kind of enjoy this setup for a moment. This one has a pretty nice, pretty crazy zoom too. You can zoom in way, like a macro zoom or something. Okay, let me zoom back on. Okay, so channel 1 is inverted, channel 2 is not. I'm going to turn on Luma key, and then basically just dialing in. I already dialed this in. This one has a more complicated Luma key than in like most other mixers. It has slice, slope, and key level. Got key level up to max. If I turn down key level, you see the channel that I'm keying in just kind of disappears. So key level up to max. Slope. This is slope at 0, and I'm going to start to dial it up. You can see once I get about halfway up the slope, we're getting more of these things are sort of popping in on the side here. And slice, I don't know what slice and slope actually mean. I just kind of play with them and see what happens. So slice is up to max, slope is up to max. And it's a little too much. Let's take slice down a little bit part ways. Word. zoom out a little bit more. And then, so what's happening is that, so Luma key is Luma keying into the darkness, but there's sort of, because the channel that I'm Luma keying into is inverted, and because they're both on this plane output to the same screen, sort of these edge zones, you can see that it's, as when you get the edges really close together, or even like far apart, just like enough amplification on the edges for the camera to pick up like whites for the camera to feed back off of, and blacks for the camera to get keyed into. It makes this sort of like super blobby zone happen. So this is a pretty fun one, and there's a lot of different variations you can do on it. And you can see what happens when I'm zooming in and zooming out. You'll notice something else where there seems like, it looks like the feedback is sort of curving, like part of the aspect ratio is like off or something. It's because the screen, I'm working with a really, really large CRT right now, and it's the camera is picking up like artifacts of the curve of the screen and like translating that into the feedback. And I'll be using a different camera in a bit with a different kind of sensor and a different kind of lens, so we can compare and contrast what happens when you have these different kinds of screens and whatnot, and how that affects the shape and color and texture of your feedback. There is a little bit of control on this camera for iris, and I'm just going to dial it down just a little bit. You can see we get like sort of more or less. This is a nice setting to have if you have a camera with auto white balance. I think this one might have auto white balance. Let me just turn on the auto on everything on this camera for a second and see what happens. I'm going to hit these buttons. See what happens. Yeah, this is a new camera to me, so I don't quite remember how it's supposed to work. So that's not really doing much. Cool. So I'm going to pause this and switch on over to another screen and see what the changes are. Hello. Cool. So now I've swapped over to using the Trinitron broadcast CRT instead of the giant consumer one. So you can see already we've got like a very different sort of like color style and light style happening in here. This sort of really nice, like almost like a weird edge detect thing happening around the rims of things here. And that's partially to do with the tube, the way that the tube senses light, and partially to do with how the broadcast television is spitting out phosphors, or spitting out electrons to hit the phosphors. So, before we go too far, I do want to show you this sort of ridiculous thing you can do as well. I took a toilet paper tube and put mylar, aluminized mylar in it, so you can see it's a reflective tube. And if you take this tube and then just place it over the lens, you get basically an infinite symmetry thing that's reflecting around the edges. And I'm just going to zoom in here so you can kind of see what's going on. So it's doing that same light blobbing thing, but in like a round tunnel instead of in a square. So that's pretty fun. This is some very, very bizarre abstract stuff that would be very difficult to get otherwise. And you can make it out of, you can make one of these out of aluminum foil too. It'll be a little bit crinklier, probably. But I don't know, if you're really into messing around with video feedback, it's pretty handy to have aluminized mylar around for building various sorts of reflective things. But yeah, anyway. Put the toilet paper tube away. Another fun thing that you can do with these broadcast TVs, which I have mentioned before, is that this one has a lot of knobs on it for you to mess around with stuff. So I'm going to set this up and then just mess around with the controls on the TV for a bit. So a good way to like sort of guarantee you're getting a lot of like fun little like light blobs floating around in this mode is to see I've left just a little bit of the edges here, which is, this is where it's picking up. So I'm zoomed in just enough so it's picking up just enough of the edges to sort of like amplify into these like ectoplasm blobs that are like morphing into the center. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I turned bright all the way down, I turned aperture all the way up, and here's chroma. If I turn chroma all the way down, we still have blobby things happening, just no color at all. At least no color on my end. It's still getting so there's no color on the screen that it's seeing. All the color you're seeing is what's being added in the MX70 processor. And then as I turn up chroma, then you all get a little bit more green over there. And I can mess around with the phase. You can see as I twist around the phase, other colors kind of jump into the dominance. So phase all the way to the counterclockwise is giving me a browner, redder feel. And then as I go into the middle, the blue dominates, and then I go, and right after that first blue domination, there's another green thing, and back to blue. Word. I can mess around with the contrast too. So if I dial the contrast all the way down, we just have this really, really shimmery strobe zone. And then as I turn it up, so that jump up really does a lot. And then kind of play around with the other things on the MX70 along with this. So I'm going to turn color gain all the way down on here. This is color gain on the channel 2 here. And we turn Y gain down a bit as well. So let me crank up Y gain all the way. Turn down Y setup. Y gain and Y setup, in this context, Y setup is a constant that's being added or subtracted to luminance, and Y gain is an attenuator, so it's multiplying. So if I set Y setup to like -1, that means it's like subtracting, it's offsetting luminance by a very large number, and then multiplying the luminance by a very large number. So this sort of adds, you can use that's sort of how some like contrast functions work. So if you have a setup and a gain on your Y channel, you can dial in contrast. And then you can turn up setup a whole lot until it blobs completely out, and I'll turn off gain. So you can see I'm reducing contrast overall. We still get really, really nice, smooth, slow, oozing stuff. It's really hard to get this kind of slow stuff in an analog setup like that. We'll start to dial up the color gain a lot too. So you can see on this TV as well, it's not doing that really curvy thing that it was doing on the other one. So I'm just turning up all the colors to max here, just to see what happens. And it's got this really soft, glowing feel. And turn, this is me dialing Y gain all the way down and turning up Y setup. And wow. So I'm getting some really super saturated, ghostly things happening here. Try some different focusing things too. See if I can get more worms happening. So you can see on this TV as well, we're getting a lot less of the reaction diffusion worms happening and more slow blobs. I'm curious if I can turn down, let me keep the chroma all the way up. Let me turn down the brightness and see if I can get some more As I turn down the brightness all the way on this screen, you can see there's a little bit more, yeah, a little bit more wormy things. They're moving a little bit too fast. A little bit though. So I'm sort of dialing in some really weird contrasty things by messing around with Y gain and Y setup. This is something that would be a little bit more difficult to do just on a camera itself, although you could probably, if you had something to like be changing your white balance with and your iris with all the time, you could approximate things like this. You can think of white balance as being the setup and iris as being gain. Not quite, but I don't know, close enough. Alright, so we're getting some really fun, oozy, ghostly things on the broadcast CRT. And let me take a break and let's see what happens on the LCD TV. Hello! So now I've got the tube camera pointed at an LCD screen. So this is a very flat screen. We're going in order from most curved to least curved here. But as you can see, there is still some like spatial vignetting happening as we zoom in. You can see the what starts out as a straight line around the outside. This straight line, as it gets repeated and drawn in, it curves, which I'm guessing, I don't have a lot of experience with tube cameras yet, but I'm guessing it has something to do with the tube camera itself, doing some spatial morphing. So that's a pretty fun effect to be getting. Yeah, let me zoom in a bit. I've got the... turn up the light a bit on this situation. Turning up the setup right now, and I've got gain reduced a bit because I want to get some more of the colorful things happening. And wow. So check this out. This is one reason why I highly recommend that people get, what do you call it? Some sort of LCD TV with an upscaler involved if you can, because this sort of stuff is really fun to play with. You can see that the upscaling, I've also dialed in the sharpness quite a bit and turned down the brightness on this screen a lot, which is giving me a lot of really nice slow moving formations. The screen also has really, really nice chroma. Like really nice saturation and like chroma control, which you can see is giving me a lot of like shimmering rainbow things happening in this weird pastel green. But yeah, this is just a really fun way you can get this really like, see how each of these channels is moving sort of in different directions and with really contrasting textures. It's just lovely. I've definitely mentioned this before, but one of the most fun things to do in a video feedback setting is to combine analog and digital signals and sort of try to get the best out of both. So this tube camera is giving me really soft, gushy feedback, but the digital processing and the digital screen is allowing for this crazy color things to be happening, this really slow movement. See if I can do some more fun stuff with the color here. Dial down the blue a bit. See if we can get some more rainbows happening. The Y setup. So, something that's pretty strange for people to deal with composite. The composite video signal has chrominance and luminance separated, and they only have explicit instructions on how to get red and blue in the signal. Because you can, if you have the instructions to get red and blue, then green is sort of calculated as a implicit calculation off of that. So as I turn up Y setup, that amplifies the green a lot. So if I turn down Y setup and turn up Y gain, I might need to zoom out some more to get some of those blobs showing up again. Oh no, here they come. So you can see when I turn down setup and I turn up Y gain, they're not as green anymore. They're more white and they have more of the color. Because as you change the Y in this controller here, you're not just changing brightness, but you're changing green as well. So that's something to keep in mind. Dialing up Y gain more and more. And we're getting back some of the green, but not exactly the same way. See what happens if I turn PB all the way down. Now we have some yellow. And I'll take red all the way to the top. There we go. We're getting some rainbow things happening here. So as people might know from stuff that I share a lot, I really like hue cycling to happen. And I think it's also really nice when you get hue cycling that sort of is not quite just a pure rainbow happening all the time. So you can see the hue cycling is kind of only happening on the uninverted channel here. Oh yeah, so I said I would try inverting color on these as well to see what happens. So let me get that started and set up. So first I'm going to try inverting the color on the channel 1, the channel that has inverted black and white as well. So you can see when I did that, it just kind of turned the color off. This may also have to do with the fact that I turned color gain up a lot. Try messing around with the color gain on that, but I don't think it's really going to do anything. Maybe if I turn a delay on. Okay, so I turned decay on that channel as well, which totally destroyed all of the color, actually. Word. So, I'll try turn color inversion off. I'm curious what happens if I leave the decay on for a bit. I'm going to leave decay on this channel, and then let's go over to channel 2, and let me turn color inversion on there. Try messing around with the Y things. So here's a fun thing you get from upscaling, is there's moire. You can see a rainbow moire pattern right there happening, and I think I've talked about moire before on these, but moire just means that there's sort of more information in a grid. The information on the pixel grid here of the LCD is just more than the camera sensor can actually register, so it's sort of aliasing. It's two-dimensional aliasing. Yeah, the color inversion on this is doing some really fun things with rainbow strobing. Losing a little bit of it. Try to adjust the focus too. Maybe we can get some more blobby things happening. Turning on posterize here just to see what happens. Posterizing just kind of turns everything into lose all the little distinctions between the lines there. Turn on a mirror just on one channel. I need to zoom out to see what's happening with that more. decay back on this one to allow for, wanted to see if that would allow more color to show up. And, oh, a minute, let me try messing around with the mosaic thing. I like the pixelate function on this particular mixer because you can control X and Y separately if you so desire. So I'm just pixelating as a function of Y right now. Switch it over to pixelating just as a function of X. This is pretty crazy. You can like sort of like dynamically dial in like how much pixelization you want to happen. Whoa. Wow. You can see there's sort of like moire. The same moire that's happening in the chroma is also sort of happening in the pixelization as well. It just makes it a bit more blatant than it was.